Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast where entrepreneurs, founders, and ambitious professionals come to learn from those who have walked the path, navigating challenges and achieving success. Whether it's thriving in business, pivoting, scaling for growth, fundraising, or finding work-life balance, dealing with loneliness, adversity, or overcoming personal struggles. Our guests share the insights and strategies that have empowered them to level up. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Jon Gillham, a visionary entrepreneur who's been ahead of the AI curve long before ChatGPT became a household name. Jon is the founder of Originality.AI, a cutting-edge platform built to detect AI-generated content and modern plagiarism with precision, transparency, and usability. Before diving into the AI space, Jon successfully built and sold a content marketing agency where he was one of the earliest adopters of generative AI for SEO at scale. That hands-on experience gave him a front row seat to the massive wave AI was about to unleash. Today, Jon leads a team of expert machine learning engineers, researchers, and marketers on a mission to bring transparency to digital content in a world where the line between human and AI-generated writing is getting blurrier by the day. In this episode, we will talk about the moment he knew the world needed a better solution and his journey as a founder. Hi, Jon. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, doing well, Sonia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm always excited to have these conversations and see where it leads, and hopefully our audience can learn a little bit from you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so let's get down to it. What was the aha moment that made you realize the world needed a better plagiarism checker and that you were the one to build it?
Yeah, so my background before Originality was a content marketing agency where we had a large team of writers that were working for clients, and
Mm-hmm.
we were one of the heaviest users of Jasper before ChatGPT, and had sort of seen this wave of generative AI coming. We had some content that we were selling transparently as AI generated um, to our customers, and then we had some that we were saying, no, this is human generated, but although we had a policy in place, we didn't really have any great controls for ensuring that the content was truly human generated versus AI generated, other than the policy. And so that was kind of the aha moment that said, yeah, this is current plagiarism checkers are not sufficient in a world of generative AI.
Yeah, so I know, I mean, I do it myself. A lot of people are now using AI to create content and things like that. How much of what we're seeing out there now is actually AI generated versus having a real human build it from beginning to end?
Yeah, it's I mean, I guess so different platforms have different, so we do a ton of studies on this because we find it
Mm-hmm.
just really infinitely fascinating to sort of understand how AI is sort of infiltrating content in the world, whether it be, spam AI content or quality AI content, and sort of trying to sort of map how AI slop is spreading across the internet. Um, when we looked at LinkedIn as an example and
Mm-hmm.
long form posts, over 50% of long form posts on LinkedIn were identified as being AI generated. The on Google, we're seeing about 20% of search results
Mm-hmm.
are AI generated, and as you can sort of guess, climbing across a lot of these platforms.
Yeah. Is there a penalty for users? Like there's a lot of small businesses that just don't have the resources to do all this content creation and writing blog posts and things like that. But is there a penalty from places like Google and things like that for that identifies that a lot of that has been done with AI?
Yeah, so Google's a yes, but it's a longer answer. But also I'll come back to that one. LinkedIn, the answer is they don't have one, but they just sort of promote on engagement. And what we
Mm-hmm.
looked at was that human content did have a higher engagement rate than AI content, but it wasn't a drastic difference. And so it looked
Mm.
like AI content had less engagement than human content. There could have been other variables that sort of impacted those findings. With Google. they have come out and been extremely clear with their actions that they hate AI generated spam. Somebody being able to click a button, publish thousands of articles with AI, and try and pass that off to get traffic from Google and
Mm,
monetize that traffic. Google hates that. Google
mm,
is waging war against AI spam. Now,
mm,
I think where it gets that's clear. Where it gets nuanced and tricky for people to follow is that and for all of us to follow is that not all AI content is spam, but certainly in 2025, all spam on the internet is likely generated by AI because it's a far more efficient way of doing it than via humans.
mm,
Um, and so we're seeing public. So the sort of short answer is that yes, Google is aggressively punishing AI generated spam. Where it gets tricky is not all AI content is spam, but I think what's very clear is that publishing AI generated content is riskier than publishing human generated content. That
mm.
is a decision that small businesses need to make on whether or not that risk is worth the reward. Certainly be extremely careful, and I strongly recommend people don't sort of mass publish AI generated content.
Yeah. Okay. So, what happens when you use AI as a guide to help you build, some sort of a blog post or something like that, but you edit it and you modify it to be, to have your content. You're just sort of using AI as a guide to build something because maybe you're not a writer or you don't know the guidelines and things like that. Is that still the same thing?
So I think anytime you're using AI, there's a risk with it. I
Mm,
think it's well worth it at times. Myself, I'm a terrible writer. I'd rather think in spreadsheet form than in sort of word form. And so
yeah.
AI is a way better writer than I am.
Right.
I think my sort of recommendation to my own marketing team and then to others is to sort of think beyond words in terms of how you're adding value to
Mm,
your visitors. And so if you're trying to sort of get visitors to come to your page to then find out about your business and service offering, thinking beyond words. If what you're providing is just sort of an answer to a question that can be solved with just words, then AI is going to, whether it be AI overview or AI mode or people going to ChatGPT, they're going to just sort of shortcut the findings of that process and get the answer direct from AI if your contributions to the searcher is just words. If you can add
mm.
additional value in the form of sort of primary research, images, a simple tool, if you can add value beyond words, I think that's the sort of opportunity that exists for marketers and business owners in sort of an AI world.
Got it. So you've been ahead of the curve when it comes to AI and content. What first drew you into the world of generative AI before it exploded into the mainstream?
Yeah, so our content marketing agency was really focused on being able to produce predictable results. I mean, I think anyone that reads my writing would be shocked that I've been sort of in the world of like generating content because I'm a terrible writer. But I sort of find it fascinating the sort of ability to predictably produce marketing outcomes that are successful for businesses. And so that the sort of the dream of being able to like click a button with AI, produce a bunch of content, and have it rank and get traffic is incredibly compelling. Um,
Mm,
and we tested that heavily when sort of GPT-3 kind of came out and the results were very clear that there's you can generate sort of quick spikes, but in the long run, if it's not contributing value to the user, then it's not gonna win in the long run. So what sort of drew us to that was exactly what I said around the ability to predictably produce results that help businesses win online was always something that has been yeah an interesting game to play.
hmm
And as soon as AI was a tool, even back in like 2000, like GPT-2 days, that
Yeah.
was terrible. But GPT-3 became kind of okay.
Yeah.
Um, so that was what was it I have found and continue to find super fascinating.
So before launching Originality AI, you built and sold a content marketing agency, like you mentioned. What lessons from that experience shaped how you approach your new venture?
Yeah. it became so we launched Originality 3 days before ChatGPT launched, which is pretty kind of fascinating timing. Hindsight, wish we pushed the pace a lot harder
Yeah.
to get launched but anyways, it was great. Um, one of the decisions because sort of generative AI exploded after ChatGPT, we were getting questions and we were the first commercially available AI detection solution. We were getting questions from, all use cases that you can imagine, academia, resumes, interview, user-generated content platforms, and then a
Mm,
lot from the world of digital marketing. And so what informed us about the um, building originality off the backs of the content marketing agency was building for an audience that we deeply understood. And so we
hmm
stayed really focused on the world of digital marketing, people publishing content on the web, and tried to sort of ignore the noise of the thousands of students and teachers signing up to our platform, where that was just a use case that we weren't uniquely qualified to solve, even though we did have and do have the most accurate AI detection tool on the
hmm
market. It's just not the sort of use case that we're staying focused on, and that was what sort of informed what we took away from the learnings of building the content marketing agency.
So tell us a little bit about your tool and the process and how it works.
Yeah, so the tool is a complete content quality QA/QC tool. So basically everything that anyone functions as a copy editor does, the tool helps them do that. So if you have a freelance writer or somebody on your team that writes a piece of content, you can get it from them, you put it into Originality, and then that helps check for a bunch of the quality control checks that you need to do. So whether it was AI generated or not, whether it was plagiarized, if is it fact checking any statement of fact in the article, grammar and spelling check, readability check, and then the content optimization score. And
Mm.
so a complete process to make sure that the content that you've received from your writers meets your standards and is safe to hit publish with.
So you can still use AI sort of to help you generate, a blog post or whatever, and then you go to your tool and put it in there and see what the results are and how you can modify it to not have any of those red flags.
Yeah, that's correct. So
Okay.
a lot of people, we have different models based on the policy that companies have with how AI is allowed to be used. And
Mm,
so there's a lot of companies that, yep, we just want to make sure that a human is in the loop. And so we have sort of a model setting around that's called light, where light AI editing is allowed. Um,
mm,
Complete AI writing is not allowed. And so that's the light model. And then it will see highlighted sections based on what the model thinks sounded more like it was written by an AI versus a human. And a lot of people do exactly that, where they want to use AI, but they don't want their content to kind of come across and sound like, yeah, that was like they put in the work, but they want to be able to have others know that that work was truly their own, and so they don't want
mm.
sections that show up as likely AI generated.
Okay. So there's a lot of skepticism about AI detectors. What sets Originality.AI apart from the noise, and how do you address concerns about accuracy or false positives?
Yeah, so I think the AI detection tools are highly accurate but not perfect. And so they are extremely effective in use cases where that level of efficacy is acceptable. There are
Mm,
use cases that where AI detection tools are being used that require perfection. And AI detection tools should not be used in those use cases. Academic discipline is one where we've stayed away from that market because to be able to show that this student with 100% certainty used AI is not possible with classifiers. Think of them a little bit like the weather.
mm,
Highly likely, if they say it's going to rain, that it's going to rain, but it's not perfect. And that's sort of a similar
right.
system where it's an AI that is predicting based on some inputs, and it can be highly accurate, but not perfect. And therefore, those tools should be used in use cases where that understood level of efficacy is acceptable. And so that's sort of how to think about it. For us, we built this in large part for writers, because we worked with a ton of writers, and we sort of viewed ourselves as what's standing between writers and thousands of people that could, or millions of people that could just sign up to ChatGPT and compete with them on their words, and how do they get paid for the value that they provide. So what sets us apart is, we're built for a specific use case, and so our training
Mm,
data set is more tuned to that use case, and so we can have a higher rate of accuracy and a lower false positive rate for content that is published on the web. And so that's one way that we're set apart from an accuracy standpoint. And
mm,
then we also build and have other features that are available for free that helps writers manage false positives if they do occur. And so we have a free Chrome extension that looks at a Google document and then can take all the like character by character metadata that was
mm,
inputted into that document, and it basically can make a video of the person writing the document. So on the sort of 1% of the time where a false positive does happen, we
mm,
have tools that help them deal with that in a writer business or writer agency relationship,
yeah,
that is different than sort of a student academic relationship where it's more adversarial and you need
yeah.
tools to be perfect.
What happens if a business is utilizing AI to help them with their SEO strategy? How does that get affected as well?
It depends on how, I think the cyborg content, where it's sort of like, where's the line between what was AI and what was human?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think what's important is that companies have a policy around what is acceptable and not acceptable use of AI within their marketing teams, and then having a tool in place to try and check to ensure that that is the case. Some companies are
Mm,
like no AI ever, period. We have a turbo model that if AI is used in research and anything is copied and pasted over, it's going to catch that.
mm,
And then we have the light model where it's like, yep, so using it for research and then writing it yourself and then using AI to edit, that's probably going to be identified as human when you're using the light model because that's what the model has been trained on that type of content.
mm.
The Yeah, so that's the uh, tricky answer because it's a where that line is different for going to be different for every company.
Yeah.
And we try and provide different models and then highlighting to help people really sort of define what is acceptable use and not acceptable use of AI in their
Yeah.
workplace.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong here, but technically you're using AI to identify AI.
Yeah, it's like the good Terminator.
I think that's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you've
it
worked
is.
with machine learning engineers, developers, and marketers. How did you build and scale a team around such a technical and fast evolving product?
Yeah, we got really lucky. So I'd worked with some of the team before on some other projects. The lead
Mm,
developer I'd had a relationship with. Incredibly lucky to find the AI research lead who stays with us. He was from a different country. We moved him to Canada, and he's loving it, which is great. Um, I think one of the things that we do that's novel and has been quite fun is we have a we have a red team and a blue team. So it's such a fast moving space where there are
mm-hmm.
businesses built around trying to bypass originality.
Right.
And we have a red team that is trying to do exactly that. How do we always trying to use the latest model, and to bypass our detection capabilities. And then we have the blue team, the detection team, trying to continue to stay ahead. And that sort of we're not we're playing against ourselves and trying to get better
Mm-hmm.
against ourselves and not sort of waiting for the market to move. And so by doing that, I think we're having a much faster cycle time of improvements and pushing development, ourselves as opposed to sort of waiting and playing a cat and mouse game and being reactionary. We're trying to be extremely
Yeah.
proactive about the sort of identification of bypassing methods, closing of those before they even make it into any kind of um, bypassing tool.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some setbacks because you've been in business for a while and you've built out your team. What's a major failure or lesson you've encountered on this journey, and how did it shape the path forward for your business?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was, I think I've had my background has been as sort of a bootstrapped entrepreneur.
Okay.
Um, we didn't set out to build a societally important business in the form of Originality. We thought this was sort of like a niche B2B vertical SaaS simple solution for a customer that
Mm-hmm.
we deeply understood, and pretty boring. That was what we sort of thought we were building. And then ChatGPT launched and things changed. We did not I did not change the way I executed. The opportunity significantly changed, and I didn't change the way that I executed. And I think that was a significant failure. I think if we'd pushed the pace harder, if I'd scaled the team faster, the
Yeah.
team was like two and a half when we, one and a half really when we kind of launched, um, and we scaled now to sort of like 20 people. Um, but that was a really slow scale, fully bootstrapped. I think the opportunity uh, justified a very different method of execution. I ski
Yeah.
coached for 17 of the first 30 days after launch. Um, that wasn't a mistake, but that was just a sort of, I think, a reflection of I think of the broader symptom of continued execution that didn't adapt for the change of the market.
Yeah. But since you've launched, ChatGPT came along and now there's like a million different AI tools out there. How do you keep up with everything that's going on?
Yeah, so I think the red team, blue team dynamic really helps with that, where we have a
Okay.
lot of people out with sort of listening systems in
Mm,
place to try and pick up on every academic paper that comes out about a new benchmark. We test ourselves. Anytime any benchmark, any data set anywhere gets released, we test and share to the public.
mm,
We're trying to sort of push the pace and the level of transparency that's expected from AI. I think there's sort of a big push around ethical development of AI.
mm-hmm.
We're trying to push the sort of narrative around ethical use of AI as well. That there's phenomenal tool, great use cases. Don't want to read a baby formula review written by AI. I think there's an ethical
Mm,
use case component to that as well. So how do we keep pace? One, we're trying to set the pace by sort of our own transparent efforts into research, um, and then having an organization set up to uh, be listening and testing everything that comes along. But I think it's a uh, I think it's a deliberate the pace is so significant that there needs to be a deliberate effort to
mm.
build into the infrastructure of the organization the capacity to do that, because it's not something that you can just sort of stay up to date on by one email a week.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you bootstrapped when you first started, and I find that a lot of startups don't do that anymore. They have an idea and they're like, we're gonna find investors. And I'm always trying to tell founders like that's not how it works. You need to have a product so that an investor can come in and say, where are you at? And I'm willing to invest. Because investors don't invest in ideas; they invest in um, companies that are have potential, right? So are you still in the bootstrap model, or have you pivoted from that?
Yeah, still bootstrapped. I think again, probably a mistake to be bootstrapped as long as we have been. Probably would have made sense to take some, we were playing sort of a venture scale, like
Mm,
in a venture scale business, bootstrapped, and maybe that's not the right play. But I
yeah,
think um, I 100% agree with, I think that the sort of default to build
yeah,
and then I mean, especially now when it's the tools that are available to help build are remove so much cost and so much difficulty from that process that
yeah,
I think more than ever it makes a ton of sense to build, prove product market fit, and then scale,
yeah,
if you need to. But I think it's,
yeah,
I mean, I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of sort of control and optionality.
Yeah,
And I think bootstrapping, it's a two-way, once you take venture funding, there's no going back. I mean,
that's
really
true.
hard to. But that option's still available to us if you're bootstrapped.
You've mentioned it a couple times where you said we bootstrapped and that could have been a mistake. So why did you make the decision not to go after? I mean, you might eventually, but you haven't till to date. So why
Yeah.
haven't you done that?
Yeah, control.
Control.
And I think there's a lot of scenarios where this business is a successful business.
Mm,
That at current size, it's a successful business. It's not a successful venture funded business at its current size. Um,
mm,
Growth rate is great, but again, maybe it's not sort of venture funded growth rate, and that's partly because of the sort of the conservative nature that we're executing it under.
yeah.
Um, and so I think it removes a lot of successful outcomes. If I say sort of traditional VC, billion, $10 billion exit in 5 to 10 years as the target. Um, I think there's a lot of paths for this business being already profitable, that don't require that size of an exit, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to take those sort of successful outcomes off the table for this business. So I think that's the really the main reason. And
Yeah.
again, I know there's different funding methods and mechanisms that sort of temper that sort of standard line that venture needs to see that sort of
Yeah.
those massive outlier outcomes. Otherwise, it's worthless to them. Um, and so that's been, I think, the big reason is that it right now we have a lot of flexibility, a lot of control, and we're winning on product and doing well on marketing. And I think that I think we have a high probability of a really good outcome.
Yeah.
I don't want to reduce that probability for an exceptional outcome.
Well, also like with when you bring in a VC, there's it's a lot of pressure because they do want their return on investment. So as a founder, it puts more pressure on you, and maybe you have to change your business model and things that you heavily believe in order to fulfill that need to, get to a certain point revenue wise to get that return on investment. So it is a lot more stress for a
Yeah,
founder to take on, I think, right?
yeah. And
And you have to answer
I
to a
ski.
board.
Yes, and I think like I was going to say I ski about 90 days a year, and I'm not
Okay.
sure if that's consistent with with their expectations.
Yeah, that's true. But I do think that like every founder that I talk to nowadays, no one ever considers bootstrapping. Everyone is like,
Interesting.
I'm talking to someone right now who is at the idea stage. So I do a lot of mentoring and I help founders with their early stage strategies. And I'm shocked at how many people come to me and they're like, yeah, I want you to help me build out my business plan, get my MVP in place. I'm like, great. Okay, let's work through this. And I'm like, what's your end goal in all of this? And they're like, oh, I want to get VC. And I'm like, you're still in the idea stage. You're not making any revenue at all. You haven't even tested the model to see if people actually really want this. But they'll go out, do a little bit of research, and say, there's already someone out there doing something similar, but I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to make it a little bit better. And then they just think that they're going to do it better versus someone who's been doing it for many, many, many years who could just see what they're doing it and do it in like a day. So I always struggle with like founders that don't even consider the bootstrapping because I'm like, your brain is not even like taking that into consideration and you're not looking at all the different possibilities. Not that everyone can bootstrap, but if you're relying on a VC to fund your idea, I think sometimes you might be out to lunch to think that that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I'd be shocked unless I I don't know if I've seen Bootstrap, but I'm certainly exposed to that world, and I don't think I've
Yeah.
seen very many ideas funded unless it's unless you're coming with a sort of like AI
Yeah.
research lab pedigree that is the and previous exit. I think if you're in that sort of extremely rare group, I
Yeah.
I think that you can get money. Alex that exited from OpenAI. He could have
Yeah.
said whatever, and he's getting money thrown at him. I think there's that
Exactly.
sort of select few people that are in that camp of like idea and here's funding. I think that's not reality for most of us.
Yeah.
And that even yeah, I think now. I mean, AI is producing a few things in the world that's unique to startups. I think certainly the ability to prototype and build something
Yeah.
is incredibly empowering to zero funded entrepreneurs, bootstrap entrepreneurs. And I think um, the advantage of distribution in
Yeah.
a world where that if sort of technical product hurdle drops,
Mm-hmm.
then what takes its place? And I think distribution becomes an advantage. And so I think um, entrepreneurs that are looking to start a company, prototyping and building an audience and sort of getting an unfair advantage on distribution. Um, Certainly trumps trying to get funding to, and I think both
Yeah.
of those things can be done for extremely low dollars. Um, I mean, depends on the complexity of the
Yeah.
tool. But I think, yeah, I think the other sort of challenge that I see from people that do sort of focus on like funding first, then the customer becomes like they're thinking
Yeah.
about their customer as the VC as opposed to the people that they're solving the problem for.
Yeah. That's a good point. I see that a lot too.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. There's so many tools, AI tools out there now that can help you get a prototype ready or a small MVP, so you can at least start testing the market with some real data versus selling your presentation with theoretical data and just your dream, right? Like you can
Yeah.
actually use this is a perfect example when you can use AI to help you. uh I've had people who tell me, oh yeah, AI is my founder, and I'm like, I think that's great. If you don't have one and it's helping you with that process,
Yeah.
sure, why not, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. I haven't heard anyone say that, but I mean, I've heard of AI employees, but not AI co-founders. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
makes tons of sense. Why not?
Uh, okay, John. Well, we're running out of time, but before we go, I want to ask you one last question. For founders listening who are building or pivoting in a fast-moving space like AI, what's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you earlier?
Um, I think the one that we've applied that has sort of yielded tons of surprising benefits
Mm-hmm.
is thinking through the red team, blue team. In a fast-moving space, you can really get into the sort of the mindset of like listening and reacting,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of the dynamics of especially if it's a somewhat competitive space around like sort of cat and mouse game, the red team, blue team sort of structure that we put in place has yielded some really interesting benefits. And something that I wish, no one really sort of said like, hey, here's how you should do this in a fast moving
Mm.
space in a cat and mouse game. But it's been really empowering to not feel sort of like just like passive reactionary people on this journey,
Yeah.
but we're sort of in control of the pace and able to sort of just ramp it up and push it as aggressively as we can. So that's been if you're in a fast moving dynamic space that has any kind of cat and mouse dynamics to it, thinking about
Yeah.
a red team, blue team infrastructure for your organization's a fun one.
How did you come up with the idea and then implement it?
I don't know. I can't trace that idea back to sort of any specific thing other than we had somebody that, I think we had somebody acting on the AI research team as sort of always the one that was testing any benchmark and like, hey, here's this
Mm.
new tool that says they bypass us, go test it. And then we just sort
Yeah.
of formalized that role into like, you're the red team. You need to try
Nice.
and beat our detection tool, and your
Yeah.
job is to, instead of this sort of like they were reacting to us listening to things like, hey, here's this new paper, new
Mm.
benchmark, test it. We just sort of pivoted their role into, your job is to both listen and push the pace and um, try and beat our tool. And your metrics are how well you can beat our tool. The blue team's metrics are how well that our tool works.
Love it. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for walking us through a little bit of your journey as a founder.
Now it's been fun. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank John for joining me today and sharing the journey behind building Originality AI. From being an early adopter to generative AI for SEO to identifying a gap in plagiarism detection tools, John's journey is a great example of what it means to spot opportunity early on and take action. His insights on building a team, launching in fast moving space, and learning from failure are powerful takeaways for any founder navigating growth and change. If you're building something or thinking about pivoting, this episode is a reminder that innovation starts with listening, iterating, and staying ahead. And that's a wrap. To our listeners, thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, growth, and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and connect with our community on social media. I'd love to hear your feedback, so leave a review and let me know what topics you'd want to explore in future episodes. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace challenges, adapt with tenacity, and keep pushing forward. Keep growing, keep pivoting, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.